The following is a presentation of Sertoba Media and Comey Media Incorporated.
One and all, it's that time again. We're back for Total Football Talk Extra. I am your host, Drew Willingham. And as we have been doing for the past 3 months, we have to welcome in our special insider for this special episode. Welcome back, Mr. Ryan McCarthy. Yeah. Welcome back to Extra, as we are here yet again to discuss CFL action, as well as we've got some Monday Night Football action and Thursday Night Football action. But most importantly, how are you doing there, sir?
Doing pretty good. I had no credentials acquired this morning. Talked some Week 12 with Dustin. Talked a little extra football, did a little extra topics here and there too, just for Saturday funsies. So, now I'm here with you on Total Football Talk Extra. A day late, a day late, but always on time.
Hey, there it is. There it is. You are always on time. I'm the one lately who has been struggling, but the work schedule and all sorts of stuff been all over the place with things in the life. But everybody understands and gets it. We're making things happen out here. We're doing things on a Saturday. We normally been doing things on Fridays. But we got Total Football Talk, the original show, going yesterday and got caught up with everything in the NFL up until this point. But you and I have been mainly talking CFL. Mm-hmm. And we'll get to that game in a little bit. And by default this week, it made it as the game of the week. I mean, it was the Grey Cup. But, you could argue the Thursday night game could have potentially been, the game of the week with how close it was. But there were certain parts to that game as well that you could argue either or. But with that being said, let's not delay it anymore. Let's take it into the opening drive.
All right, let's go. We got trips, right? At 42, 989. On two. Ready? Ready.
And here with the opening drive, we're going to start it off with a little Monday Night Football. And here with Monday Night Football, it was the battle between the two teams in Texas. That being the Houston Texans and the Dallas Cowboys. The final game of the Week 11 matchups was this Monday night, the 18th at 8:15 p.m. Eastern Time. And Ryan, the Texans, the road team, same state, but road team, mollywopped the Dallas Cowboys. Looking at this game for what it was, looking at what they did over there at the quarterback position in Houston, the numbers weren't really all that great. C.J. Stroud had 23 completions out of 34 attempts for 257 passing yards, but did throw an interception on the day. He had 3 carries on the ground for 26 rushing yards. Joe Mixon, though, was the biggest contributor for the Texans team, as he had 20 carries for 109 rushing yards and 3 rushing touchdowns. That is not a typo on your slate. That is absolutely 100% correct. He also had 2 receptions for 44 yards on the day. Nico Collins had 4 receptions for 54 yards in this game. Looking at what he did to contribute, he was a definitely big contributor to this team on this day with his receiving yards. Tank Dell as well. They both had the same amount of receptions and receiving yards. 4 receptions for 54 yards. They were equally as big contributors on the receiving court for that team. Texans defense, 5 sacks. I repeat, 5 sacks in this game on the Dallas Cowboys quarterback known as Cooper Rush. Cooper Rush also had a lot of passing attempts, but we'll get to that here in a second. Kaimi Fairbairn was 2 of 2 on field goals for the day with a long of 33 yards. He did contribute 10 points to those 34 points scored by the Texans. But I'd say besides the running game, because the running game was the biggest part for their offense, their defense definitely contained that Cowboys, if you want to call it an offense. It looks like a JV squad out there against the NFL team known as the Texans. Cooper Rush, though, he was the big man amongst boys out there as he threw for 55 total passes, but he only completed 32 of them. He did have 354 passing yards. He did also have a passing touchdown, but he threw an interception as well. He did have 2 carries for 2 yards on the ground, but also lost 2 fumbles during those 2 carries. CeeDee Lamb had 8 receptions for 93 yards on the day. Kevontae Turpin had 3 receptions for 86 yards, but also put up a touchdown in this game. Look at the Cowboys defense, had 1 sack, but they did manage to get an interception from CJ Stroud in this game by Malik Hooker. Brandon Aubrey let the team down, even though his missed field goal didn't really do but so much. He was 1 for 2 on the day, and the one that he made was for 53 yards. Very, very low point for them with that. He did contribute 4 points between that and the extra point for the touchdown they scored from that Cooper Rush touchdown pass to Kevontae Turpin. Looking at this game this past Monday night, the 18th, the final game of the Week 11 contest. What are your overall thoughts with this dumpster Pelican game there, Ryan?
Are they still them boys?
Ooh, I don't think so. What I can do is click a certain button where, no, don't tell me that it disappeared.
No.
Oh, you know what I can do, though?
Oh,
I can switch this on over to here and click the button over here because I know this button is over here. We're going to click. Are we still in board?
Ain't nobody calling me, texting me, paging me, asking me, are you still involved? Calling me, texting me, paging me, asking me, am I still involved? Y'all usually check on me. Listen. I'm still involved. Woo, oh, shut up, my boy, shut up. I'm still involved.
This has been yet another Beating a Dead Horse presentation.
And now we're back to extra. Yes, it was a folder away. I was like, oh man, I don't have it. But yes, I do. This guy's but continue, my bad.
Yeah, I mean the Texans need this game. They demonstrated. I watched the highlights. I did the cliff notes. I did full disclosure for the Thursday night game and the Monday night game. I used the cliff notes. I didn't watch the games. I watched the highlights. But I could tell in this game, I could tell Houston they won this game because they lost to a vastly inferior team on Halloween. Then they blew the game against Detroit, where they're up 23-10, 23-3, and they let that game slip away. Even after forcing 5 interceptions out of Jared Goff, they still lost that game. So they need this game. They need this win in the biggest way to stay up in the standings in the AFC South. Again, with the Indianapolis Colts chasing them. But right now, the Colts, I think they're a game out of the last wild card spot, but they're also a game and a half out of the AFC South standing. So Houston's a better team than the record that they are, for sure. And they demonstrated against a vastly inferior opponent in the Dallas Cowboys, who have not won at home at AT&T at Gerald World this year. And this is just another L lost in the column for the Dallas Cowboys. If you're the Dallas Cowboys, if you're Gerald right now, are you looking yourself in the mirror and saying, what do I have to do to get this team to be where it once was? You have to be asking yourself that question, because even though the stats may not look like you dominated the game, the time of possession was pretty much even. They had more passing yards, but they had to have more passing yards on more attempts because they have no running attack. Dowdle had Dowdle who had 28 yards. He was their leading rusher in this game. What happened to Zeke Elliott? Are you force feeding him like a goose in Quebec and just give him foie gras? Is he out to pasture now? You don't have a running game. You can't stop the run. Your only resort is to throw the ball 55 times. And even with 32 and 55, 354 yards, one touchdown, all you can get is one touchdown? I mean, this is a lost season if you're the Dallas Cowboys. If you're a Dallas Cowboys fan, I know that the delusional ones, as our friend Vic Allah would say, the Republic of the delusional Republic of Cowboys Nation. I can't remember what the exact term is, but the moronic Republic of Cowboys Nation. But he's the rational one. He's saying, yeah, this team needs to rebuild. This team needs to hire football people to run football operations. In a very similar fashion to my New York Jets. We'll talk about them in just a bit. But this team ain't it. This team ain't it. You overpaid your quarterback. You overpaid your best wide receiver. You're going to lose your best defensive player, probably not after this season, because he has a 5th-year option. They'll probably put a franchise tag on him, Micah Parsons. But you've got a lot to think about in the offseason. It's going to start with the head coach, because Mike McCarthy, no relation, he's gone. He's a dead man walking right now. But they're just going to delay his execution until Black Monday. But yeah, Houston needed this game. They got this game. CJ Stroud, not great number, good numbers, not great numbers. Didn't throw for a touchdown, but you don't have to if you got a running back like Joe Mixon doing what he did in this game. 100 plus yards, 3 touchdowns. And all you have to do is, if you're CJ Stroud, all you need to do is just enough not to screw up the game. And this is what happened in this game. The defense took over. They got a touchdown. The defense scored a touchdown on a fumble recovery. And yeah, the Texans, they needed the win. They got the win. For the Cowboys, had to hit the reset button, or actually time to hit the blow up button, because you got to blow up this team. I don't know why delusional Cowboys fans are saying we're going to Super Bowl. We're going to Super Bowl. No, I'm sorry. You're not going to the Super Bowl this year. You're definitely not going for the Super Bowl for probably another decade at this juncture, because of who is in charge.
The only place that the Cowboys are going this year is destination.
Let me talk to you.
And contrary for what my man just said about those Cowboys fans, going to the Super Bowl, all you need to
stop it. Get some help.
Everybody is doing this at all of you right now who have been saying for the past 3 decades that you're going to the Super Bowl. Cue Cody Rhodes.
You guys want to hear a fucking story?
Story is this. They absolutely suck right now. I mean, you are worse than what the Commanders were last year at this point. Even though you do have 3 wins. You will probably still gain another win or 2 before the season is up. I mean, you should with who you have on the roster, but the way things have been going for you lately, it doesn't look like that's going to be a possibility, because you've lost 4, 5 straight games now, you being the Cowboys. So looking at it for what it is, the Texans are not playing up to the level of what they were playing last year, but they are still respectively 7-4. and can still do damage in the playoffs. They can get hot at the right time and make some damage. But there are other teams that are banged up. There are other teams like the Bills who are steamrolling right now, but it hasn't gotten to January yet. And when they get to January and that snow starts to cool them off, we'll see if it would. I mean, it's just what we've seen for the past 3 years. 2021 was supposed to be their year. 2022 was supposed to be their year. 2023, Cowboys were supposed to have their year every single year, and it's not working now. So I'm sorry, Cowboys Nation, but
You can't handle the truth.
with all that being said, let's go and take a look at the comment section for the comments that we've got rolling in right now. Our guy Sick Diggy's in the house. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. What is it, about 8:48 over there in Norway for you? This is what makes our show international right now, because Sick Diggy is on our comment section. So shout out to him for being here. We appreciate you out here in these streams. Brace yourselves. It's time to get extra wild and extra deep and extra insightful. Welcome to Total Football Talk Extra. Sick was bringing some gems yesterday, and I got a bunch of shorts I got to cut out this weekend from content that we've recorded over the past couple of days. Shout out to him for always dropping the dimes, zingers for us to be saying out here in the streams. And they haven't been them boys since 95 to 96. The cheerleaders, however, are still them gals.
Amen and amen.
You know, speaking of amen, I got to give Sick this.
Oh, my brother, testify.
When it comes to a wrestling reference and old brother Devon right there, was that a total
Surprise, motherfucker.
Come on now, brother. Now, Sick Dicky also says, anytime Prescott yells, "Here we go," I wonder where he's directing the offense.
Yeah, and Cooper Rush was doing the "here we go" thing too.
Mm-hmm. He was doing it the game that he was like 15 completions out of 45 attempts for like 45 yards or whatever it was. It was absolutely astronomically bad. Yeah,
if you're wondering where they're going to 5 losses in a row, and probably, knock on wood, 6 tomorrow.
But if you ask old Gerald, he'll say this.
Hell to the no, to the no, 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 no. Hell no, no, to the no, no.
I wonder when he makes trade proposals or any type of deals with agents or whatnot, if they literally look at Gerald and say this.
English, motherfucker, do you speak it?
I mean, yeah, because he's not making any sense. He didn't make any moves during this past offseason. No trades, no offseason signings. He lost more players than he brought in because they all went to the Commanders with Dan Quinn.
Derrick Henry was there for the taking. He was there.
Would have killed him, though, if he was over there. Derrick Henry probably be hurt already. If he was in Dallas. I mean, look at Dak. Dak's already hurt.
Oh, Dak literally tore the hamstring off his bone in that Falcons game.
I know. Blame the offensive line, and you would be saying the same thing if we were to go back in time, make sure Derrick Henry goes to the Cowboys like it's a Madden video game trade. Same thing would happen to him too.
Maybe. But also, alternatively, the Dallas Cowboys' fortunes might be different. And we just don't know what kind of we don't know. And if we had Doctor Strange here and we had him calculate how many universes that could have happened, there's only one possibility, and it never happened.
I mean, you got your elite running back Ezekiel Elliott only putting up 1 carry for 8 yards in this past game. I'm just saying, a lot of that has to do with the offensive line. But, I'm not saying I was being facetious when I was saying that he was elite, but he hasn't really had a good offensive line in the past few years that he's played. When you look at the New England Patriots and the tenure with old Mac and Cheese Jones, and now coming back to the Cowboys, they're even worse than they were when he left. It's like they were doomed ever since that stupid way they lined up the scrimmage, and he hiked the ball got hiked to him, and everybody else is all spread out. It was that was the last play of Ezekiel Elliott's career before he came back. Well, as a Cowboy, last one as a Cowboy before he came back this year. Looking at that for what it is, I think he'd be better off just having that as his last play of his career and never coming back. This is an embarrassment. This sucks. I feel bad for my cool Cowboys friends out there, like Vic a lot, and those of you that aren't overly Cowboys Nation,
who are not part of the moronic Republic of Cowboys Nation. No.
Yes, the same ones that felt bad for me when I was going through my years of woe, which, I mean, it can happen just like that. But this right here is a result of just expletive poor management.
Yep.
So there it is. Sick also says, I wonder if Jerry Jones is even aware of things or surrounded by a bunch of yes men. That's a detrimental combination of senility and being surrounded by brown nosers.
I would have to think it's the latter more than the former. He's definitely surrounded by a bunch of yes men, I think.
Which is, his sons too. It's up there.
His sons and his children. Yeah.
So it's the same thing that's going on over there in New York with the Jets, with the Johnson family. But we'll get into that here in a little bit. I don't want to get into that quite too soon. But that was the Monday night game. Let's go ahead and take things into the next step here for the opening drive and review the Thursday night game. This past Thursday, we kicked off Week 12 in the NFL as the Pittsburgh Steelers traveled to Cleveland to take on the Browns. The snow was coming down over there in Cleveland, Ohio. There, Mr. McCarthy. There at 8:15 p.m. Eastern time for this kickoff to Week 12. The Pittsburgh Steelers would lose 24-19 as they were leading 19-18 when the Browns came back and scored there on the goal line with 57 seconds left this past Thursday night. Looking at this game for what it was, let's take a dive into the statistics now. Jameis Winston, 18-27 for completions out of attempts for 219 passing yards. He threw an interception, but it didn't cost him as they were still able to find a way to win. Basically, when you look at the fact that he did put some damage to the other team on the ground, 3 carries for 7 yards on the ground for the day, and did have a rushing touchdown. Nick Chubb, we've been welcoming back Nick Chubb for only a short period of time. It's been nice to see him back after that devastating injury he suffered a while back. I mean, it took him a long road to recovery, but he's not putting up like Nick Chubb numbers what we were used to, but he's still getting in the end zone, which is important. He did have the amount of carries that we would like to see from him. He had 20 carries on the day. He only put up 59 yards in this game, but you got to look at the weather conditions that they were a part of for one. 2, you got to look at the Pittsburgh Steelers defense for what they were able to do to this offensive front of the Cleveland Browns. He only put up 59 rushing yards, but he did get 2 rushing touchdowns. He added 1 reception for 1 yard on the day as well. Jerry Jeudy had 6 receptions for 85 yards, as well as Jordan Atkins had 3 receptions for 38 yards for the receiving core of the Browns. The Browns defense made a big impact to this team. 4 sacks on the day. Dustin Hopkins, the kicker, only had 1 field goal completed out of 1 attempt. It was for 34 yards, but he did put up 4 total points with the extra point tries for the Nick Chubb rushing touchdowns. So now, when you look at that in comparison to the Steelers, who were actually up with 1 minute left, and then the Browns come back and score right there at the very end. Russell Wilson didn't do horrible on the day. He didn't turn the ball over. He was 21 completions out of 28 attempts. He also had 270 passing yards out of those completions for 1 passing touchdown. He did run the ball 3 times for a total of 10 rushing yards. Jaylen Warren, the apparent successor to Najee Harris at some point, puts up 11 carries for 45 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. He also had 3 receptions for 19 yards on the day. When you compare that to Najee Harris, who had 16 carries, 5 more carries than Warren, for 4 less yards, 41 total rushing yards. I say the writing's on the wall. I think this is Najee Harris's last year, but we'll get to that when it comes to his tenure in Pittsburgh here in a little bit. He did add 2 receptions for 13 yards, but again, Warren outshined him, and he didn't really shine. He just had a better average per rushing attempt. Calvin Austin had 3 receptions for 78 receiving yards and a receiving touchdown. Pat Fryermuth, their tight end, had 4 receptions for 59 yards on the day. And the Steelers' defense had 1 sack with an interception by Dante Jackson. Chris Boswell, the kicker, did miss a key field goal earlier. It would have made a difference in the way this game transpired in the last quarter. He missed that, but he did make the other 2 attempts that he had out of 3 total. And he had a long of 48, contributing 7 of the 19 points for the Steelers on the day, but he could have contributed more had he made that field goal and kept the momentum in the favor of the Steelers. Looking at this game for Thursday night, what were your overall thoughts? Not with just seeing the action on the field, but seeing the conditions that they were playing in.
Yeah, I another game I went back, had to watch had to do the Cliff Notes, cram for the exam. but I watched the highlights. Then the conditions didn't really start to deteriorate until about midway. I'd say about 5 minutes left in the third quarter.
Yep.
And then you just see blizzard conditions, and you see Al Michaels having a really tough time following and tracking the ball, tracking the players who make the receptions or run the ball. But here is a statistic. I was looking at the team stats. Here is a stat that is going to stick out here. And I watched the highlights and give credit to the Cleveland Browns defense, especially the defensive line, because there were 3 attempts made by the Pittsburgh Steelers on 4th down. And 2 of them were 4th and less than a yard. And the defensive line stuffed them. Absolutely stuffed Justin Fields or whoever, or Russell Wilson, whoever was trying to carry the ball, absolutely stuffed them. The only time they converted a 4th down was in the 4th quarter when they were on that touchdown scoring drive. On the flip side, the Browns went on 4th down 4 times. They converted all 4 attempts on 4th down. That to me was probably the biggest stat of the game. The fact that the defense held when Jameis Winston threw that ill-advised interception late in the 4th quarter. We figured, this is game over. It's all needs a couple first downs, and the Steelers can clinch it. But give the credit to the defense; they held, got the ball back for their guys, and Winston made a few very key throws on 3rd down to Jerry Jeudy, especially. He had himself a pretty good game with 85 receiving yards, and the fact that he got a lot of those yards in deteriorating conditions on the field, it's been a tough season for the Browns. And I'm gonna give flowers to my co-host Dustin here, who said during No Credentials Required, what if maybe the Browns' fortunes would be different if Jameis Winston was quarterback of this team at the beginning of the season and not Deshaun Watson? And I had to agree with them. I had to agree with them because it just seems like the Browns have been playing much better ball with Winston than they did with Deshaun Watson in the lineup. So, but the Browns defense is always going to give fits to the other team. This is a rivalry game. This is a long-standing rivalry in the NFL, the old NFL, the OG NFL, pre-merger NFL, that has bled into the AFC Central and now the AFC North. And you always get hyped for rivalry games. Got to get hyped for rivalry games. And they're always going to be close. I mean, you'll see a few blowouts here and there, but yeah, this is one of those games, as an example of a rivalry game living up to the hype. And for Pittsburgh, you have to wonder if they were kind of overlooking the Browns, especially after that win on Sunday against the Ravens. And they just overlooked the fact that the Browns defense is still legit. They were number 1 a couple seasons ago. When you got Myles Garrett doing all the disruption, they have 4 sacks to prove it. They didn't have many turnovers in this game. But the defense of the Browns is still going to be keeping them in games. So credit to them, credit to credit to Jameis Winston for keeping his calm and leading them on a touchdown drive to take the lead. Nick Chubb, you see him, his last touchdown, no gloves. He went old school Ricky Waters, no gloves, and
He did.
touchdown. Scores game-winning touchdown. Good for that. Good for him coming back after that really devastating injury last year that could have been career-threatening. But thankfully, came back. He's back in full form, and hopefully this turns things around for the Browns. I know the AFC is execrable right now. With a lot of teams who are 3-8, 4-7, but they're still within like 2 games of a playoff berth of the last wild card spot. So maybe this is the thing for the Browns to give you the resilient team that they were last year when they had Joe Flacco in the lineup. Maybe Jameis Winston is this year's Joe Flacco. I'm not going to go that far, but if they win their next 6 in a row, they might earn themselves a playoff spot. So, full credit to the Browns defense. And again, full credit to that offense and Jameis Winston for not panicking after he threw that interception and getting the job done on a Thursday night.
You're absolutely right. I mean, it just goes to show that it doesn't matter what's going on in the game until the clock hits 0. Because, I mean, a team can be leading for 3 quarters with what we saw this past week with the Commanders and the Eagles on the previous Thursday night game. And in the 4th quarter, you just let the floodgates open with the rushing attack. And then all of a sudden, Saquon takes the game over there in the 4th quarter. And then, of course, JD threw an interception, but we're not going to talk more about that because we're talking about this Thursday's game. But right here and now for this, I mean, the snow did impact there, like you said, from the 3rd quarter on. It wasn't that much of an impact until the 3rd quarter. And it wasn't like what we saw on Monday night. This was a more competitive contest. Like you said, divisional rivalry between these 2 teams. The Browns defense is still serious. Like, they still want to win. And they want to win in spite of Jameis at this point, and in spite of what this management team did by making that horrendous contract with Jameis, because it crippled that franchise. Myles Garrett, anybody else who's there for an extended stay with a nice contract deal is trying to find a way to get out of there. I mean, it's like it's not quite as bad as the Jets, but it kind of is. Like, you're paying Aaron Rodgers $35 million a year over there, but you're paying Deshaun Watson a whole lot more.
That's guaranteed money too.
Yes,
Watson's guaranteed.
You can cut bait with Rodgers after this season and be okay.
They might cut bait with him this season.
I don't think they're going to Danny Dimes him. I mean, I think that they got to see. You still have another month and a half left. You still have damn near 2 months left. You might as well see if there's anything. You made the trade for Devontae. You might as well see if you can win half of the games left. You might have some hope. And we'll get to the one topic within that, here later in the Gridiron Scoop. But right here and now for this game, I really wanted to pick this as the game of the week, but we had a CFL game to cover. So with this edition, we have 3 games to talk about. And without further ado, that ends our NFL recap for this week at this point. But we do have some more to discuss when we take it to what we would like to say is the game of the week. And for the game of the week, as Mr. McCarthy likes to say it at times, would you say, based on not only our picks throughout the playoffs, throughout the season, would you say that this was pretty much an upset? I mean, with this Grey Cup, Toronto Argonauts came in to play Winnipeg this past Sunday at 6:00 p.m. Eastern time. The Argonauts put up 41 points on the Winnipeg Blue Bombers to win 41-24 in the 2024 Grey Cup. Looking at the stats, I know I asked you that question there. I'll give you an opportunity to answer here in a second. But looking at what Nick Arbuckle did coming in for the injured Chad Kelly, who got injured in the previous finals matchup, he puts up 26 completions out of 37 attempts in this game. Had 252 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, also threw 2 interceptions, but it didn't really make too big of a deal because they still won by 17 points in the end. He also added 2 carries on the ground for 11 yards. Kadeem Carey, the staple to this offense this season, in my opinion. A 15 carry day for 79 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. Kadeem Carey, absolutely big contributor to why they even made it to the Grey Cup. And I would have to argue that he was a big contributor to why they won the Grey Cup. We'll get into that more here in a minute. He also had 3 receptions for 10 yards on the day. Dejon Brissett had 3 receptions for 45 yards and a receiving touchdown. Kevin Mittal had 2 receptions for 23 yards and a receiving touchdown. The Argonauts defense put up 1 sack on the day, but put up not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4. You can't see me, but they did put up 4 interceptions on the day when it came to them recovering those from Zach Collaros. Those 4 interceptions were hauled in by Benji Franklin, who's had at least 1 interception in the past 4 games and multiple games with 2 interceptions per game. You got to look at Wynton McManus, Deshaun Amos, and Robert Priester. All 4 of those guys hauled in an interception apiece for the Argonauts to help mollywop this Winnipeg Blue Bombers offense. Our man Liram. We got to talk about Liram for a second there, Ryan McCarthy. We have another opportunity here in episode 12, week 12 for us in episode coverage, but we have an opportunity to talk about Liram.
Hey.
Okay. We also have one more opportunity for you to help me say this motherfather's name because I know how to say his first name. I got that down to practice. Laralu. Am I close?
You're close. It's Haralahu.
Haralahu.
There you go.
Cindy Luhu. All right. but with that being said, Liram
or the snipes call from King of the Hill.
Liram saved one of his best games for last though in this season. I mean, he was perfect. I mean, he did a lot of this throughout the year where he, was 3 for 3, 4 for 4, 5 for 5. He very seldom missed. And he had 4 completed field goals out of 4 attempts in this game with a long of 45 yards, contributed 16 of the 41 points. When you look at the fact that this team won by 17 points over the Blue Bombers, you could argue that it was because of Liram. Liram's the man. They would have still won by 1 point had he missed everything. But hey, Liram is the man. You got to give him his props when it's due, and I'm doing it right now. Could be a sneak peek to my dog of the week. We shall see. But Zach Collaros for the Blue Bombers, somebody who has been a big part of their turnaround. When they were playing like dumpster Pelicans at the beginning of the year, I was giving them a hard time. Mr. McCarthy here over on my side over here was saying, hey, they've made 4 straight Grey Cups. They've been going to all these championship games. They have slow starts. They can still turn it around. And they kept losing. And then eventually they turned it around. So, because I was saying that during week 2, I was like, this team looks awful. But a few more weeks went by. They kept losing. Eventually they turned it around. They made it here. But it just looks like they ran out of gas, in my opinion. When you look at what Zach Collaros did, 15 of 30 on the day, 311 passing yards, and 4 interceptions. Brady Oliveira, another big staple to this offense, kind of like Carey is for the Argonauts as the running back. He had 11 carries on the day for 84 rushing yards, which is kind of lackluster when you look at what he's been doing throughout the season. He had 11 carries for 84 yards. That's still big, but the fact that the other team held him to that is pretty remarkable. He also did have a rushing touchdown, so he did have a productive day as far as scoring. But we normally are used to seeing Oliveira have 15 to 20 to 25 carries in a game. And they held to barely. He was just over 10. Looking at Terry Wilson Jr., the backup quarterback, had 1 carry for 3 yards and a rushing touchdown, which is what helped the Blue Bombers get another score. Ontario Wilson, the lead receiver for this team on the season, had 5 receptions for 99 yards on the day. And Kenny Lawler had 2 receptions for 27 yards. He was the second leading receiver for this team, just to show how deprived they were because Colaros couldn't really get him the ball. He did throw 311 passing yards, but it wasn't for touchdowns. It's like he was throwing it was going the other way. Blue Bombers defense had 2 sacks on the day with 2 interceptions. And those came from Willie Jefferson, who had the 2 sacks as well, and Terrell Bonds, who had the other interception on the day. Sergio Castillo added 3 field goals out of 3 attempts with a long of 40 yards and put up 10 total points for this Winnipeg Blue Bombers team. The rest came on the other touchdowns. But looking at it for what it is, the way this game went, this Grey Cup, let's break it down. What are your thoughts? Because I know you watched this.
Yep. I didn't watch the halftime show, though. That was not a Jonas Brothers stan. Sorry to say. Yeah, this was considering that Winnipeg was a 10.5 point favorite coming into this game. So yeah, this is a pretty monumental upset, if you want to call it that, according to if you're the kind of person who goes according to the betting lines. But I gotta hand it to the defense of the Argonauts, forcing those 4 turnovers. Actually, also, and their special teams also forcing a turnover as well. There were 2 points where I can pinpoint to say this game had a turnaround. You can pinpoint to the first interception that Colaros threw, because it was right after they forced a field goal. They actually had a chance to go up 17-3 early in the second quarter, but they couldn't convert. They couldn't convert inside the Toronto 10, so Toronto's defense came through. So they wanted to kick a field goal instead. But Toronto was driving. They had to get a field goal. And at one point, Hiralahu's leg got run into. One of his players got shoved into, and it looked like he would. And you see him on the ground, and he's rolling. I'm like, oh no! I texted you. I'm like, hey, Hiralahu Liram just went down. This could be huge.
I know I set this up. Not that, matter. But for you to say this.
But it really didn't matter. But the turning point of the game was definitely Lucky Whitehead's turnover. After Winnipeg forced a punt out of Toronto. It looked like he didn't have a clear, I wouldn't say clear shot of the ball, but he was starting to run, and he bobbled it, and it wound up costing the Blue Bombers that. I think that was one of the things that cost them that game, was that turnover on special teams. Special teams, that's why they're called special teams, because you have the opportunity to do special things. That was one of those things, which led to a touchdown they went ahead at that point, and they never trailed for the rest of the game. The other thing you can point out to is Colaros getting injured. Colaros cut his index finger on I believe it was a Argonauts defender's helmet, and he had to go back to the locker room, get it stitched up, get it numbed down, and Kerry Wilson comes in for him, and he didn't. This is a big mistake. I think this was the biggest error that Mike O'Shea in his coaching era. This was one of the biggest errors committed by him, because when Colaros came back, got his finger stitched up, probably got it numbed up too. You could tell he's warming up, and he's in clear discomfort. You just see him just go like just gritting his teeth, grimacing. You can tell he's not feeling it. And Bombers get within 1. Argo score a touchdown. And then Colaros throws that interception, throws that ball to Robert Priester, who takes it back for a pick 6, and that's it. Then it's done. It's done. And Wynton McManus almost had a pick six. Got tripped up at the end, but yeah, you just tell the snowball effect was happening after Collaros has that injury, cuts his hand, and if Kerry Wilson stays in the game, gets more comfortable with the speed and with everything that's going on. He's a rookie too, so he was third string at the beginning of the year until Chris Streveler hurt his knee and then he became sick. Then he came back up. But I think if Kerry Wilson stayed out there and had the chance to get comfortable, get used to the speed of the game, it would have been a different outcome. I think the score would have been a lot closer, and maybe the Argonauts, and then maybe the Blue Bombers had a chance to win. And here's another confusing thing. You are not sticking with the girl you brought to the dance. You're not sticking to your game plan of running the ball. Yeah, Brady Oliveira had 84 yards and 11 carries, but you only had to give him 11 carries. He's your workhorse running back. You have him there for a reason. And if you're deviating from the game plan because you're too far behind, that's why you had the result that it was. Yes, I mean those two interceptions don't get thrown by Collaros, the pick six and the one to McManus that the Argonauts eventually converted to go up by 4 scores. This would have been a different outcome. But if you stick to the game plan that you stuck with for the rest from week 5 onward, when you started an 0-4 hole and you still managed to get back to the Grey Cup for the 5th straight time, this would have been a different outcome. But unfortunately, they deviated from the original plan. And granted, I mean, I get it, trying to force, but you're also trying to force the ball into a secondary that's full of ball hawks. Absolutely full. Like Toronto and Montreal, they're kind of built in the same way, especially in their defense. Their secondaries are just outstanding. And Toronto, they showed it. 4 picks in this game. So yeah, I mean, this is gonna come back to bite the Blue Bombers, and we see what happens from here. Are some of their guys who have been there for a long time, are they going to leave in free agency, or are they going to retire? We heard about Zach Collaros possibly retiring if they won the Grey Cup. We don't really know for sure. We'll find out. But yeah, this was a very surprising. The scoreline was a very surprising outcome, I think. But I keep forgetting you never count out Pinball Clemens, president of operations for the Toronto Argonauts. He's been there for a long time. I stand corrected, by the way. I said last week that they hadn't lost. They'd won 6. The last 6 times they've been in the Grey. The last 8 times they've been in the Grey Cup, they won 8 in a row. I apologize. It was the last 6 times, and now it's 7 in a row that Toronto has been in the Grey Cup, and they're undefeated. So they're undefeated when Michael Pinball Clemens, has been with the team, whether as a player, a coach, or president of football operations for the Toronto Argonauts. So you never count him out. He just knows how to put together a good team, and he's been doing that for the last decade either as a coach or GM or president of football operations. We gotta get him on the shows, I think, sometime. He's a good guy. He's a positive dude.
Yeah, it'd be nice to talk to him and get his insight on things, especially building championship teams. Because I mean, playing, being part of coaching up the players too. Doing your part to make this team better, and that's what he's been doing. But
yeah, I was there. I was there in 2004 in Ottawa when they won that Grey Cup when he was a head coach.
Oh, you were there for it. Nice.
I was there for it.
That is awesome. Mr. McCarthy was there for that Grey Cup, and he will have to share some pictures and whatnot the next time we talk about the playoffs and Grey Cup. If I would have known that ahead of time, I would have said, hey, man, you got to bring these pictures in. I can click the button. But other than that, though, I didn't expect this type of game, like this type of lopsidedness towards the end. Like you said, Collaros talking about potentially retiring. Couldn't get the ball to Oliveira, enough to where he only had 11 carries on the day. And we're used to seeing him have 20, 25 plus carries a game for like 120 to 140 yards. And they just couldn't get him the ball. So you didn't establish the run. you were kind of putting the pressure on the front. It looked like a little bit. The game is much different with only having to do it within 3 downs. And I've learned a lot just from really paying attention, this year to it. And it's definitely been fun covering the CFL with you. Now 12 episodes throughout Total Football Talk Extra. And then all of the season throughout Total Football Talk up until the time the NFL started, 3 months ago. So, man, time went by so fast covering it to where we are now just finishing up the Grey Cup coverage. I can't believe it, man. There was a lot of statistics, a lot of, highlights and stuff that we went over from just what we've reviewed. But I've got some ideas, for next year on how to enhance it a little bit. We'll talk more off air about it. But we had to finish up this season in the only way we knew how, and that was to bring you guys the Grey Cup coverage between the Toronto Argonauts and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. I wish we could have had the Saskatchewan Roughriders. You knew I was going to find a way to get that in there at least once today because they didn't play. So I had to find my time. But right here and now, that does it pretty much for the opening drive. We're going to go ahead and take it into our next segment where we go into the Grand Champ of the Week for Total Football Talk Extra.
All right, let's go. We got trips, right? At 42, 989. On two. Ready? Quick!
Total Football Talk Extra.
Hey, my dog, Zach. There's
one right there.
Mr. McCarthy.
Right
We
there.
are back for one more Grand Champ segment, but now we have to switch it up because CFL's ending. We're ushering in some NFL games now towards the end of this week. So the Total Football Talk Extra Grand Champ of the Week, not the CFL one. You can pick either in the CFL game, the Grey Cup, or from this past Monday or Thursday night's games. What is your Grand Champ this week there, sir?
My Grand Champ of Total Football Talk Extra this week is Toronto Argonauts quarterback Nick Arbuckle. And if you watch the Grey Cup, he's got one of the most interesting stories of narratives of the Grey Cup. Lost his mother when he was a teenager. His dad's currently battling cancer. In 2020, he was forced to stay in Canada with his wife and at that time a newborn daughter. Couldn't go back to the U.S. He was a backup for the Stampeders back in 2018 when they won their Grey Cup, and he was forced into this role after Chad Kelly had his broke his tibia and fibula in the East final. Came in, got the job done, and was curious to see what happened this week in the Grey Cup. And he performed. He did his job. He did his job. 26 of 37, 252 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Also contributed 2 carries for 11 yards, and won the game MVP for the Grey Cup. But considering all his story and the adversity he went through, he was the third quarterback on the roster when training camp opened. It was Chad Kelly, Cameron Dukes, and Nick Arbuckle. And with the first 9 weeks of the season, or the 9 games of the season, Chad Kelly serving a suspension for conduct unbecoming of a professional football player off the field. He was put into the role he was backup. He's basically a backup, and he's 30 years old, and he's, I don't know if his time as a player in the CFL is coming to an end, but I'm hoping the story continues. I mean, he's a free agent this year, this coming off season, but I have a feeling he's going to stay in Toronto because of his familiarity with the system, his relationship with Ryan Dinwiddie, his head coach, who in 2007 was forced into the same role to play his first game of the season as a starter in the biggest game of the year. Same thing happened with him. Got lots of good advice from Ryan Dinwiddie, his head coach. And the result is a 41-24 win, and it's an awesome story. And Nick Arbuckle is my grand champ of the week.
Nice. That's a solid pick there, Mr. McCarthy. I was thinking about picking him, but your selection of him helped me make my choices. I was juggling two players. Very good. You stay within the CFL. I'm actually going to be within the NFL for my choice, and I'm going to go with a player from this past Thursday night. When you think about the road that he has had to travel over the course of the past years of change, you touched light on it earlier when we were talking about this game, and I have to give this one to Nick Chubb. Put up 2 rushing touchdowns in this game. Big contributor as to why the Browns were in position to even win the game. He did put up a lot of carries on the day, 20 carries. Didn't get the yardage that we would have liked, but he put up 2 rushing touchdowns, and the Browns only scored 3 total touchdowns on the day. So looking at it for what it is, between his 2 rushing touchdowns, Jameis's rushing touchdown, and Dustin Hopkins, they were the 3 main scorers of this game. And Chubb had not just 1, but 2 big scores. So because of that, and I think about, his knee injury, I kind of get a little emotional when thinking about that, because I myself have experienced bad knee injury in the past, actually twice in the same knee. Long story. But with all that being said, not quite to the nature of what his was. His was much worse. But just knowing the pain when you have, whether it's ankle, foot, knee, when it has to deal with your wheels that you put all your weight on to get from A to B, that pain is absolutely horrendous. So shout out to him for going through all the PT to get back on the field, to not only have 20 rushing attempts. I'm not even that concerned about the 59 yards now when you think about his knee going backwards like it did last year. He put up 2 rushing touchdowns in this game. He needs to be a role model to those who get knocked down and then have to fight to get back up. It's Nick Chubb is my pick for the grand champ of this week.
Solid pick. Nick Chubb coming back after that really bad knee injury and working his way back into playing condition or playing shape this year. Solid pick.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yours too. Had to take one from both leagues. And that's how we'll round it out for episode 12 when it comes to our dog of the week. Before we go to the Snowflake, let's go ahead and acknowledge some comments that we got. Sick Diggy's been lighting it up over here in the chat. He says, and the dog pound were howling and barking in that game. The spirit of the mistake by the lake lives on over there in Cleveland. Definitely big words. He says, as the old saying goes, it ain't over until it's over.
Yogi Berra, my dog.
Other than that, he also says, it's always a challenge when you play in the snow. It's the time of day and night, as well as the weather conditions will always play a factor. And it definitely did in this game with that snow.
Yeah.
The house says, yo, what's up, fella?
What's up, Ike?
The snow was coming down. It absolutely was. But like we talked about earlier, didn't really affect the first half. Was it cold in the first half? Yes. That's why the snow was sticking. But the second half was where it really was making an impact in that game. The rest is just sick and him going back and forth in the comments. But with that being said, we've now gone through the grand champ. Let's go ahead and take this into the Snowflake of the week, and basically contributed the most towards taking
Total Football Talk Extra.
Oh, yeah, it's that time for the Snowflake of the Week pick. And for his choice for the TFT XTRA pick, I'll leave it with McCarthy.
Right, that music for the Snowflake of the Week gives me Christmas and Hollis vibes. I love that song. Run DMC, let's go. All right, my Snowflake of the Week. I alluded to it in our Game of the Week chat regarding the Grey Cup. And I got to give my snowflake of the week to the coaching staff of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, especially on the offensive side of the ball, between head coach Mike O'Shea and offensive coordinator Buck Pierce, who apparently, if he wants the BC Lions coaching job, because Luke Campbell was dismissed of his duties this week in BC as co-GM and head coach. But why would you? Because of what happened in this Grey Cup. And like I said, for the entire year, offensively, the bread and butter of this team was running the football with Brady Oliveira. But in the biggest game of the year, you only give him the ball 11 times. Now, those 11 times turned to 89 yards and a touchdown. But he's been your workhorse for the entire season. He won league most outstanding player this year. He also won the most outstanding Canadian in the CFL this year. Why aren't you getting him the ball when you know when your starting quarterback gets hurt? He slashes his finger late in the third quarter. And you got to bring in your backup who doesn't have a whole lot of playing experience on the field. Let him carry the ball. Let him run down that clock. Let him, like we talked about it in our preview last week, where Drew and I thought this team has a chance to stamp their legacy with three Stanley Cups, 3 Grey Cups in 5 seasons. Now you've been to 5 Grey Cups and won 2. And the reason why is because you deviated from your original game plan from the girl who brought to the dance this year, and you also allowed Zach Collaros to stay in after he was injured. That's bad decision. And after that, had a pretty decent game, not a great game, but then he throws 3 interceptions, which basically that was the game right there. That was the reason why you lost. It's because of your decision making, forcing Zach to make all those throws when you know he's clearly in discomfort, and he's not accustomed to throwing with a glove. So this loss in the Grey Cup is not necessarily on the players, but it's on the coaching staff, especially on the offensive side of the ball for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. So Buck Pierce, Mike O'Shea, you guys are my snowflake of the week.
A whole lot nicer than I would have been if I would have chose them, because man, tell you what, the expectation was the ball was just dropped in that game. Liram lit you up. Okay.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's not like a horrible thing to say. I mean, Liram lights everybody up. Liram has been a great kicker this year. I mean, I gotta give him his props where they're due, even though we're in a snowflake of the week pick. But I'm going to kind of shift it into a snowflake pick for a team that hadn't even played this week. That's on a bye week. That team is the New York Giants. You guys were on bye, and you still sucked. You're still my pick for the snowflake of the week. Why? Because of the contract you signed Daniel Jones to a couple of years back. And you still owe him like $11.93 million. We'll talk about here a little bit more here in a second. But you owe him a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
You cut him. You put him as a third string early in the week. You wasted your entire bye week to figure that out. Why didn't you name this stuff a week prior? Save yourself a little bit of agony. No, you put the team through more turmoil, and you kept him around. And even though he was a classy guy and ended it the right way, you, as not managing the situation correctly in comparison to another team in New York that we'll talk about here in a little bit, or another team that we just talked about not too long ago with not being able to manage their situation all that well, that being the Cleveland Browns with their quarterback position. You are just another team that's added to the list of franchises that have mismanaged that position and throughout the NFL merger era, where It's been like huge for teams to go after a free agent or draft somebody in the top 10 who's been, overhyped in college, especially from where he came from in Duke. I don't think there's anybody out there that's going to want to sign Daniel Jones this season because the way the contract's written, if anybody signs him, they have to pick up the remaining tab for the season of what is owed. Now, going in the next year, it's like dead cap money or whatever. No, it's not going to be as much of an impact as it is now. But apparently, Daniel Jones was so bad you had to get rid of him right here and now. Daniel Jones has had his miscues, and he has definitely had games where he should have performed better and at least met the expectation. But it's hard to meet the expectation when you're mismanaging the other 10 positions on the field around it. When it comes to the offensive line, when it comes to the Darren Waller trade, when it comes to letting Saquon walk out the door thinking, oh, he'll be back. Yeah, we've all listened to those recordings from hard. Come on now, he's not coming back. Look at what he's doing over there in Philly. Stupid. Now, looking back at this for what it is, you lose your top-tier running back. You made a trade thinking you were going to get a big name, tight end, and he was going to make an impact. It didn't work. You shell out all that money to Danny Dimes before you paid Saquon Barkley, and before you didn't pay Saquon Barkley. And the messed up part is you didn't even have to restructure the quarterback's contract at that point. You could have taken care of your running back, the main staple of your team, for several years at that point, and secured him. But instead, you let everybody walk. Everybody's gone. Surprised if Dayball still has a job at the end of the year. He should next season because he's a good coach. He's just been set up very, very, very badly. But they didn't even play this week. But my pick is the New York Giants because of what just happened yesterday with releasing Daniel Jones. Earlier in this week, announcing him to third string, putting Tommy Cutlets in there over somebody in Drew Lock that you just brought in not too long ago, who's been the second string quarterback all year, and Cutlets has been third. How do you go from third to first without somebody calling you out for it? These are reasons why you are my snowflake of the week.
Yep. Solid pick. Solid pick for the snowflake of the week. And we talked about it on No Crunches Required. Ding. This morning about the situation. I guess Daniel Jones had actually requested his release and got it. And he addressed the media a couple days on Wednesday saying I wrote a few words down after he was demoted to third string quarterback. He said, I wrote a few words down, and I want to thank the New York Giants fans. It's been a dream come true to be a quarterback for the New York Giants, and I loved every minute here. So you could kind of tell that this was coming eventually. So, and then L. Duncan tried to dunk on him on First Take or SportsCenter or whatever it was, and it's like, don't be horrible, okay? But I feel for the guy. We both Dustin and I felt for the guy because a lot of this wasn't his fault. No. A lot of this was not his fault because of the way that David Gettleman had him set up with no offensive line, no weapons to throw to. I mean, you had Saquon Barkley. You're going to play great if you have a talented running back like Saquon Barkley to help you, but you set him up with no receivers to throw to. You set him up with no offensive line to protect you. And you're not helping set up the guy for success. The Jets have had the same problem with Sam Darnold. They had the same problem with Zach Wilson. It seems like it's a disease in New York between the two teams. Like they can't figure out ways to support the quarterbacks that they draft. They think are going to take them to the next level. So this is an endemic that is going to be the reckoning is going to be harsh between the Giants. I mean, it's funny. Dustin's uncle chimed in the chat when we were doing our food takes portion of the Saturday show. And he says, hot food takes? The Giants are going to eat Daniel Jones's contract. And he's absolutely right. So Giants got a lot of cleaning up to do. I don't think, like you said, I don't think Brian Dable or Daniel Shane are gonna lose their jobs over this, but they've got a lot of work to do in the offseason. Whether they tank the rest of the year and try to get themselves a quarterback in the draft, and I guess the quarterback position is going to be loaded in this upcoming draft with some pretty notable names out there. but also wonder if they try to make themselves a trade like for Trevor Lawrence or try to bring in a veteran just kind of as a bridge to the next whoever's going to be the next quarterback in New York. So yeah, Giants got a lot of decision to make, and as John Mara foresaw in the offseason version of Hard Knocks, he said, I'm paraphrasing here, I'm gonna have lots of sleepless nights if we can't get Saquon back. Now you got a lot more sleepless nights, and you got a lighter wallet as a result because you let Daniel Jones walk out the door. You're going to eat all that money in that contract that he signed for based on one really good season and one playoff win. So, yeah. But like we said, this is not really Daniel Jones's fault. It's sad to see, but at the same time, the New York Giants did this to themselves.
So sad. It really is. But luckily, I mean, you're going through your own tale of woe over there, but I feel like the Jets, besides, they need a culture change, like what Washington got. And I don't think that that's completely the issue with the Giants. I just think that the management over there has just picked all the wrong people for what the coaching style is and what Dayball brings. I mean, they might as well make him the GM and give him an opportunity to fix things for a year or two.
Yeah.
And see if he can recoup, because it's not looking good.
Yeah. And usually when there's a coaching change, they want to bring in their own quarterback. But initially when he got to New York, he said he was excited to work with Daniel Jones. And for a season, things were starting to work out. Things seemed to work out, but then things kind of deteriorated last year, and we saw what happened. And now we're here. You are now here.
Well, we'll see how things go. Good luck to Daniel Jones. Maybe he can get picked up somewhere and be given an absolute, real chance. Dallas. Because that's it. Yeah.
No. Mike McCarthy has gone on record saying we have no interest in Daniel Jones. Although that would have been hilarious if Daniel Jones were the third quarterback for Dallas in the Thanksgiving game because they're playing the Giants.
And then if he came in and then served the. That right there would be something if we got to experience that. But we'll have to see how things go for this team and for Daniel Jones moving forward. But with that being said, let's go ahead and take it into the Gridiron Scoop, round out our last topics for this episode. The first thing let's talk about, let's go ahead and take a look at the fact that the CFL season is over in the Canadian Football League. Which CFL players do you think will get an upcoming NFL opportunity?
A couple of players in mind. One of them being quarterback out of Montreal, the backup quarterback, Davis Alexander. He's a free agent. He's going to be courted by a bunch of CFL teams, especially the ones in Alberta. Although the Calgary Stampeders did just sign PJ Walker to a 2-year deal, kind of under the radar before Grey Cup. For the Grey Cup playoffs. So we'll see what they can do there. But I think Edmonton's going to try to get his services and Calgary's going to try to get his services. But I wouldn't be surprised if Davis Alexander tries to, based on his success this season, leading the Alouettes, I wouldn't be surprised if he got a shot because he's got a strong arm. He's very mobile. And the guy is a dog. DAWG. Like he did the work this year. So, and I think having a former quarterback like Jason Moss as his head coach benefited him more. So, unless he decides to stay in Montreal or go elsewhere, try to test his services in a different in a different CFL market, I think you might give it an NFL a shot. We'll see. Maybe he'll wind up on the practice roster somewhere. One other guy I think would probably get a shot is Keyshawn Johnson of your Saskatchewan Rough Riders. I think he deserves a shot after a breakout season this year in the CFL. Another guy I could see is Joe from the same Rough Riders team. He went to a couple schools in the NCAA. I believe he played at want to say Central Florida or South Florida. I can't remember which colleges he played at, but he was high draft pick for the Saskatchewan Roughriders in the CFL draft this year. He's originally from Canada, but he's a big target. He's got great hands, and I could probably see him getting an NFL opportunity. I think NFL teams, they usually scout around this time of year to see who they could possibly bring in for training camp or an OTA or a tryout, a professional tryout. So I think Keyshawn Johnson can get a chance. I have to think Joe could get a chance. Those are the two names I could think of off the top of my head.
Well, at least I know to say his name, because I kept saying it as Aju, like it was, your Aju sauce for your French dip and Swiss, over at Arby's or something, your Aju. But yeah, he definitely made an impact too. So I just figured I'd get your take on that. You being the big CFL insider, and we've still got 2 months left. How does that work with their contracts? Are they like up at the end of every year, or if they're locked into a team for multiple years, can they not play in the NFL like during the offseason? How does it work?
No, they have the option. They have an option to go to the NFL. Austin Mack did it this last year after his season with the Alouettes ended, and they won the Grey Cup. He signed. He and I think another player on the Montreal Alouettes. They signed with NFL teams. Max signed with Atlanta, and one of his teammates, defensive lineman, signed with either Tampa Bay or Atlanta as well. Uguak signed with an NFL team, but as soon as they were released, Montreal had first dibs on both of them for their rights, as per the CBA. So if they waive their rights, they can go to other teams, but they have the option to opt out and go to try out with an NFL team. And after training camp, if they get released, then those teams they were with, they get first dibs on the rights. And it actually worked out for Austin Mack because he signed a 3-year deal with Montreal. So he's going to be in Montreal for the foreseeable future.
Gets more money out of it. Negotiating deals. That's how you play the market. That's what he did. So good on him for doing that. Let's move on to another topic that I discussed yesterday, but I'm going to get your opinion on it now that we are here for TFT Extra.
Hey, who's giving them the business?
With that being said, upon being ruled out for the third consecutive game this Sunday since being traded to the Commanders on November 5th, the trade deadline, are you concerned that this trade could end up being a bust when it comes to the trade for Marshawn Lattimore?
No, because they knew he was. Did they not know he was hurt until they traded for him? Because he was injured before.
I don't think they knew the severity of it.
Okay.
I mean, this is a third consecutive game the guy's out for.
No, I'm not too concerned. I mean, he's on IR, so he's got to wait 4 weeks before he can make the return to practice. So, but then they can get his. They can schedule him for time to practice. I mean, I don't know what the severity of his injury is. I believe was it a hamstring or was it a shoulder?
Hamstring. I mean, he was already on, the disabled list for a couple weeks going into the trade. So that 4-week window's up because he'd already been sitting down for at least a week, maybe 2. So that should be at minimum. You're at the 4-week mark now. Then if you were, because I mean, it literally he was on the shelf for a little over a week at that point. And now it's that 4-week window. They were saying all week he might be able to suit up against the Titans, and then it was announced yesterday that he is ruled out.
Yeah, I mean, if he's out for an extended period of time, then yeah, I would consider it a bust. But if he comes back and he's available for the playoffs, it might loom pretty well. So, but we'll have to see. We'll have to see. I think as we get into December, they knew he was. Like, I'm reading the Rigo's Rag, which is a fan side site for the Commanders. It says that they knew he was injured. He might not be available immediately, and he was seen jogging on the sidelines, but he's out for this game. So I think if they give it maybe a couple weeks, then yeah, it's. And it comes to the crucial last 4 weeks of the year where they really need him. They'll be in a fight for the division still. But if he's out for the rest of the year, then yeah, maybe it could be a bust. But the time frame's up to him, and how the training staff of the Commanders can help him treat his injury.
I'll still hold on hope. We'll see what happens in the next week or two before I start giving up on him.
Hey, who's giving them the business?
Moving on to our next topic. Jason Kelce, former Philadelphia Eagle, now retired in his first season of retirement, is to bring a late-night sports talk show to ESPN. Do you believe in this concept, or is this the network just grasping at straws?
I think it's a little bit of each, but I think it's also going to depend on whether or not America is suffering from Kelce fatigue, because he and his brother Travis are the two most marketable men in the NFL right now, between current player and former player. And yeah, they're very relatable. They're, with their New Heights podcast, they come off as very funny guys. I've never listened to them, but I guess it's a popular podcast and people seem to like them. Their relatability is pretty good.
It's a pretty good podcast. I'll listen to it from time to time.
Okay, so they're relatable guys. Late night currently sucks between Kimmel and Colbert and whatever's left of Jimmy Fallon. But
politics.
Because of the politics, yeah. So it could work, but in the same way, ESPN is also losing a lot of viewers too. So it's a little column A, it's a little column B. I think it could work. I'd have to see what kind of format they would do. If it's going to be sports, if it's going to be comedy, if it's going to be if it's going to be in a live studio, in front of a live studio audience, if it's going to be taped, like the other late night shows are. But you're asking Jason Kelce to go on to compete against another one of ABC's late night shows. So it's a little strange that they're doing this, but I don't know, with the popularity of the Kelce brothers right now, which could quickly turn into fatigue because of their overexposure. It could work, but they've also tried the late night comedy sports talk show before too, and that hasn't really turned out very well. So I think it's part of it's the desperation for ratings, but also they're trying to capitalize on the popularity of someone who's very marketable right now.
Yeah, because they've been pretty vague with the details of it, as far as like, is it going to be a Monday through Friday show? Is it going to be just like one day a week? If it's just one day a week, I think that they should just do it to where it airs right after the Monday Night Football game, because you're already watching ESPN anyway. It's going to come on right afterwards. Then you could do Sports Center afterwards, however you want to do it. That's if it's live. If it's recorded, then that's a different story. Yeah. And I guess you can do whatever you want with it at that point when it comes to being recorded. But I thought it was pretty interesting. I just figured I'd see what your take was on that. But yeah, I do agree with the fact that they seem to be grasping at straws, because, this is not like an ordinary sports idea for ESPN that we're accustomed to. So we shall see how it pans out. But I'm definitely interested in seeing what comes about that project.
Hey, who's giving them the business?
Now for our next topic, the era of misery between the New York Giants and quarterback Daniel Jones came to an end yesterday. Do you believe any teams will pick him up and his $11.83 million salary that's owed for the remaining 8 weeks of this season?
That depends on whether or not teams are going to just make him be a scout on the safety on the scout team, safety on the scout team. All jokes aside, I think he has a possibility of being picked up by somebody. Somebody's going to need a quarterback. They're going to need some extra depth at quarterback, especially if they're a playoff team and they're trying to get some depth for their playoff run. So he's an experienced quarterback. He'll get the veteran minimum because he's only 27 years old. Remember, folks, he's only 27 years old. Daniel Jones is not an older guy. Like, he's older in terms of experience with the NFL. He's been in the league since 2019. But I think somebody will pick him up. Maybe we'll see in Arizona pick him up. Maybe we'll see the the 49ers pick him up because Brock Purdy he's not playing this week. And we don't know what the extent of his injury is. So somebody will pick him up for the rest of the season. I think it'll be somebody who's definitely in a playoff position currently.
And the 49ers are still hanging on because they're, dancing around 500 at this point. So
yeah,
it's a pretty desperate move that you'd be spending nearly $12 million for only 8 weeks left in the regular season. And I think you only make that move if you're the 49ers if it doesn't look like Brock Purdy is going to be able to help you with that playoff run, or at least come back until the very end of the season when you still need help for anywhere between 4 and 6 games to get you to that point. Now, based on what Daniel Jones did over there with New York, it'll just go to show if it's the quarterback or if it's the team. And I think that we'll get our answer that we know with it being the team if he actually goes over there and gets the opportunity. I kind of hope he does now, just to see what happens, just to see if he can prove all the haters wrong, because I felt bad for him. But I would definitely continue to hate on the Giants for how they mismanaged that situation and many other situations over the course of the past decade or so now.
Hey, who's giving them the business?
And now with our last topic, one that you know very well when it comes to this team, and especially with this coach who coached the team before. Rex Ryan recently has offered to coach the New York Jets again and revive quarterback Aaron Rodgers' career. Do you believe this union could work successfully together in 2025?
No. Because we don't know. Well, here's the thing. We don't know if Aaron Rodgers is going to be the Jets quarterback in 2025.
Very true.
There's already, I'll talk about more of this in my closing thoughts, which may be an extended version, FYI, to our audience who are still watching out there. But as far as we know, Aaron Rodgers and the ownership of the Jets, they've had a very tenuous relationship throughout this season. It goes back to the suggestion by owner Woody Johnson after the Denver game that the Jets coaches should have benched Aaron Rodgers. So after that came out, it's been very tenuous between ownership and with Aaron Rodgers. And you could say all the things you want about Aaron Rodgers being the villain, being, as Cole Johnson's favorite person, least favorite person, I'm sorry. But you could say all the things you want about Aaron Rodgers and his stances on certain things and whatnot, but will he want to be here in 2025? And it sounds like all signs point to no at this right now. Oh, sorry, my cat just entered the room. So he might see my camera. There he is. OCE. There he is. As far as coaches go, I know Rex Ryan he's very popular in New York, but he had 2 good seasons and that was it. 2 good seasons. And he made the mistake of giving the keys to Mark Sanchez, and we found out very quickly what happened after that in 2011 and 2012 and onward. So I would say maybe to Rex Ryan, but there's other names floating out there, and Diana Rossini this afternoon this morning on her What I'm Hearing column on The Athletic believes Eric Mangini should get a second shot in New York. Yeah, I know. But, here's the thing, too. Eric Mangini wasn't that bad of a coach. But he got a raw deal in 2008 after Brett Favre, who was injured during the last 5 games, during the last run when they were 8. The Jets were 8-3 in 2008. They finished 1-4 in their last 5 games of the year because Brett Favre was hurt. And see, there's a cat. OCE. But he put together a good team. They had a solid defense. You could argue that Rex Ryan's results were because of what Eric Mangini put together. You could argue that, but this is just it's to be determined. TBD. If Rex Ryan wants the job, I guess they want to give it to him, but I think he's been in television for too long, and I think he's just shooting his mouth because he's on television and ESPN needs him to say wild things to keep the audience interested.
I agree with that last part too, especially because, looking at Eric Mangini's record in comparison, I get what you're saying, but he was only 33 of 47 with a 413 winning percentage. Rex Ryan, not much better with a 480 winning percentage, 61 of 66 for his career. Does have a 4-2 postseason record, but that a lot does come from those 2 seasons you were talking about over there in New York. And, the last year that he was a head coach was in 2016. The Bills were still trying to figure it out in 2017, did so bad. They had the 7th overall pick in 2018, and now they have Josh Allen. Yep. So looking at that for what it is, Rex Ryan has definitely contributed to the dynamic of what the AFC is looking like right now, at least for that conference. So I don't know. Had he gone from New York and had some success in Buffalo, which if he did, we wouldn't have Josh Allen in Buffalo today. But had he gone and had a little success, lost his job in 2019, 2020, and he was only out of football for 2 or 3 years at this point, I would take it into consideration. But it's been almost a decade since you were in the NFL as a coach. Yeah. It's a little too long. Mangini, same thing. The last time he was in there was in 2015 for the San Francisco 49ers as a defensive coordinator for them in 2015. So I think they're going to have to go outside the box for this, outside of the old school mentality for it, and bring in somebody new. Maybe Mark Brunell needs to go from quarterback coach to Detroit Lions to an offensive coordinator. Might be able to help you out over there as an offensive coordinator. And then you just need to get somebody that he meshes well as the head coach. Somebody who meshed pretty well with Tom Brady over there in Tampa Bay. What about Byron Leftwich?
Maybe.
Head coach. Mark Brunell is your offensive coordinator. I think that's the beginning of a culture change because look at what they've been doing since 2021. I know Dan Campbell's the head honcho over there, but he can't do it all by himself.
It's true.
So that's my thought behind that. But I see your points between Eric Mangini and better over Rex Ryan as a pick. But I just thought that was pretty interesting, and I want to get your take on your thoughts for that being the New York Jets, Kermit the Frog, and that being your team, all mixed in one. Let's go ahead and take it into the post game here in a second and discuss our final thoughts on this episode.
Hey. Who's giving them the business?
Cue it now.
As long as it's one. That's great.
And yes, this is that time of the show where we give our final thoughts. We've gone through the CFL Grey Cup, the final game of the Week 11 contest, and the first game of the Week 12 contest for this weekend, this past Thursday. With all that being said, go ahead and get your rant on with this New York Jets team of yours.
So, Tuesday, the news came out that general manager Joe Douglas was being dismissed as general manager of the New York Jets after 6 tumultuous, I'd say probably 6 decent seasons, but this year was the most tumultuous of his tenure. Yes, and I'm counting 2020, which was one of the worst years witnessing this team as a Jets fan, but arguably this year has been one of the most frustrating to watch. Now, later that day, The Athletic released an article written by beat reporter Zach Rosenblatt and Diana Rossini, giving the details of what happened during the season. And that basically Woody Johnson had cut the knees from Joe Douglas. He forced him to fire his second in charge, Rex Hogan, wasn't allowed to replace him. He was not allowed to replace one of his closest advisors, who took a job with the Los Angeles Chargers as the assistant general manager, was not allowed to replace him. He implored that Aaron Rodgers should be benched after the Denver game, and has lost confidence in said quarterback. And had lost faith, and he lost faith in Rodgers' ability to lead the team. And we all know that Aaron Rodgers isn't the same player as he was in the past. But Woody Johnson was basically the one who said, "Yeah, we'll give you the keys to bring him on over to see what we can do." And what has happened? Coaching has been terrible. Decision making has been terrible. I'll point it back to last week in their game against Indianapolis. The Jets had 4th and 2 at Indianapolis' 17-yard line with less than 2 minutes to go. Aaron Rodgers is saying, "Let's go for it. Let's go for it. We're driving. Let's go for it. Let's get the touchdown. Let's put the nail in the coffin." And Jeff Ulbrich said, "Nah, we're going for a field goal. I have confidence in my defense." And what happens? What happens? Colts go on a 70-yard drive in 6 plays, wrap up the game, and the Jets lose in Jets fashion. But we go back to the general manager's position. And what Woody Johnson had implored the Jets to do over the offseason and signing Tyron Smith, who was pretty decent, was a pretty decent left tackle, but all of a sudden this season he gets put on the Jets uniform, and all of a sudden he turns into what looks like a third stringer. Woody Johnson fired Robert Saleh with no consultation from absolutely anybody. He blocked Bryce Huff's extension, which led him to going to Philadelphia. Then he nixes a trade that Joe Douglas wants to bring in, that Joe Douglas wants to execute, that would have sent Alan Lazard to Cleveland and a day 2 draft pick for Jerry Jeudy. Jerry Jeudy would have been a New York Jet if not for Woody Johnson. He micromanages the team. He held out. Hassan Reddick, there was a reason why Hassan Reddick held out, because of Woody Johnson, because Woody Johnson refused to give him a contract extension. Woody Johnson was the one who pushed for the Devontae Adams trade. Devontae Adams is basically on 2 bad hamstrings right now. Oh, he also implored that Tony Adams would have been benched against the staff, against the wishes of the coaching staff. And he is responsible for the one losing confidence in Aaron Rodgers, who still wants to play next year, but he does not want to play for the New York Jets. So what's the common denominator for the 2024 season for the New York Jets? Is it bad coaching? In a way, yeah. Is it the deterioration of Aaron Rodgers? In a way, yeah. Is it the ownership of the New York Jets? Absolutely. This season's on Woody Johnson and Woody Johnson alone, because he can't help himself when it comes to making the decisions. He's got to be the one who makes the decision. I get it. He's the one who signs the paychecks for everyone, the coaches, the staff, all the off-field staff, all the ticket sales people who have the toughest job in America come 2025 in getting people to renew their tickets for next year. I've gone numb as a football fan this year. I can't enjoy football because my team, he pumped so much hope into selling what this team could have been on the field. And they currently sit at 3-8 with no GM, no permanent head coach, and no confidence in his quarterback that he's the one who brought in to lead this team to the next level. This team can do a lot. This team's very talented. They did very well in the draft between Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, Jermaine Johnson, Olufashinu, Will McDonald. They've done very well in the draft. Granted, there have been a few misses, both for draft and in free agency. Alan Lazard, Tyron Smith, Mike Williams, excuse me. But the common denominator here is Woody Johnson. Woody Johnson, please hire some good football people so you don't have to make the decisions which backfire on you. Hire a president of football operations who can hire a good GM, who can hire the next head coach. Because right now, I'm tired. I'm tired as a Jets fan. I don't want to watch your team. I don't want to watch this team. I don't want to go to a game every 4 or 5 years because I know what's going to happen whenever I go. Big giant L every time. So I have no faith in this team because I have no faith in what the ownership group, what this owner can do. So you have a couple of decisions down the road. You hire capable football people. If you're elected as the selected as the ambassador to the UK, good on you. See you later. Let your brother make the decisions, and he's no better either. Or you can just man up, sell the team, and make 10 times worth the investment you put into this team back in 2000 when you bought them for $635 million. You'll probably get about $6 or $7 billion, which is a nice return for what you bought them in 2000. Otherwise, I have no confidence in what your ownership, you as an owner and as a supposed leader can do for this franchise going forward. And I won't watch you on TV, and I won't go to a game either. It's not worth my time, my 3.5 hours, a full Sunday to go down and watch the product that you have some sort of hand in putting on the field. And that's my final thought.
And that's really, it's sad as a fan when you get to that point, and I've had my moments of feeling that way, of not wanting to go in a particular season because of that. And some of that was while I was doing media. I didn't feel like going because I didn't want to watch terrible product, but I still went anyway because they were still cool opportunities. But definitely very, very solid post game statement from you and about a team that you know very well, that you've had to watch for a very long time. From Kermit the Frog to this, Kermit could play better at quarterback than the Kermit-looking mother-father and Aaron Rodgers. But a lot of it has to do with the pieces around him, and a lot of it has to do with him himself. I mean, there's so much to go into it, but I can't say it any better than what you did, and I'm going to leave it alone and talk about something else.
Thank you.
So with that being said, I can't really add so many layers to this because I've done a lot of football talking over the past 2 days with Total Football Talk, the main show yesterday, recapping all of Week 11, finishing up Week 11 today with Ryan, and then starting Week 12 that we have, beginning tomorrow. That I gave a preview for all that. You'll have to go look at Total Football Talk from yesterday in order to see that preview for this Week 13's games. You'll have to see who I picked to take the dub and who I picked to take the interesting season so far for myself as a fan, a follower, a contributor of some sort for said Commanders team. It's been nice to see what they've been able to do. It was not nice to see them lose this past Thursday, but they lost respectfully to a team that's within a division that has been at the top of the division for many years now and has won a Super Bowl. The last team in the division that has won a Super Bowl out of all 4 teams. So you got to put some respect on the name for the Philadelphia Eagles. I got to put some respect on the name of Ryan McCarthy, as this is his last episode that he'll be able to do with me on a Friday for a little bit. Because, certain things he's got going on in his personal life. This has been discussed for several weeks now. The plan was to come through, for this episode 12 and go through the recap of the CFL Grey Cup for the 2024 season, which we just saw this past weekend. We just recapped all that earlier in the episode. We discussed Monday Night Football, Thursday Night Football, previewed some things here and there. Next week, the show should be back as far as extra on Friday. That is the goal. I don't know what time yet, though. I've got a few people I want to reach out to. My man Kyle Nash, to be honest, I'm going to tap to him first and see if he's available and see if we can make something happen, because I haven't done anything with him consistently in a while. And my man knows football as well. So, Kyle Nash, if you're watching, I'm already getting the head start, seeing if you come on down. But have some conversations over the next few days. Been meaning to do this over the past couple of weeks, but just time has been flowing by. I got a lot going on outside of this. The way I look at podcasting, the way I look at doing things in media is it's the amount of time I put into it is kind of like what, adults will put into video games, when they have a few hours here or, an hour here, an hour there, a couple hours here. And with the way I am with graphic design, it takes no time for me to really mess around with that. But to actually do this, it's about the same amount of time people put into video games. I don't get, achievements or a gamer score with it. Get viewers, and hopefully we can continue to do that and continue to grow this with our brand that we have over here, like I have on the hat, and that being Sertoba Media in this transition.
Sertoba Media, where the struggle is real to be awesome.
But for those of you who are watching through No Credentials Required, who are watching through Sertoba Media, who are watching through Comey Media, thank you very much for tuning in each and every week for the past 12 consecutive weeks. Like I just said, the dynamic will be a little bit different. I thanked him before we started this episode, but I'll thank him again. Bring him back up. Shout out to Ryan, and thank you for, all your contributions over the past few months, just with launching this project, helping me launch this project. But then, being there with Cole and I, for the CFL season on the original show. So it's definitely been a very fun experience, to be able to learn more about Canadian football and to have something to talk about when we don't have NFL. We covered, once we get to the next month and a half or 5 weeks, whatever you want to say, of this year, will have consistently covered an NFL, not an NFL, but a professional football product each and every single week without skipping a beat between UFL, NFL, CFL. That's why I was like, I'm glad we were able to make this work for today, because I was like, if I can get that Total Football Talk in there on Friday, we're going to keep that streak alive. Doesn't matter what day, it just matters we get it done in the same week, and we did. So for you to be able to work with me and my absolutely wild schedule of working nights and still trying to keep all this together, I greatly appreciate you, man. Same thing with Cole and everybody else that's kept this project going, because it wouldn't be possible without you guys. So other than that, man, was there anything else you wanted to say before we get on out of here? I already let the bag out, with what's going on. I didn't say what you've got going on, but the fact that we had already pre-planned that this will be our last Total Football Talk Extra episode for the foreseeable future until we can get up again, at a good time. But did you have anything else you want to leave the TFT XTRA universe with?
No, other than just to say thank you for bringing me along on this fun little project you have. I love the Canadian Football League. I've been following it since Doug Flutie. Doug Flutie was my original favorite quarterback, period. Because I've been following him. I'd been following him since Boston College when I was like 6 years old. Like between him and Kermit the Frog influencing me to become a New York Jets fan when I was 4 years old. Like those are the two. That's the Jets are the team I've stuck with, and Doug Flutie is a quarterback I've always paid attention to and I've always loved, from Boston College to the OG New Jersey Generals to the Chicago Bears to the CFL and the Buffalo Bills. Is an NFL comeback. I love this. I love this league. I love the CFL. I love talking CFL football. I love listening to podcasts or listening to shows that talk about the CFL. So I hopefully next year we'll be able to dig our heels in more with the CFL. And yeah, maybe we'll talk about some arena football. Arena Football 1 is coming in April too. So we'll follow the Albany Firebirds, following them. Oh, fun fact. So Derek Stingley, who is on the Texans, his dad played for the Albany Firebirds back in the day, the OG Albany Firebirds in the Arena Football League.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. And he's the son of Daryl Stingley, who famously was paralyzed when he played for the New England Patriots. Excuse me. So, So yeah. So the football family right there. It's pretty cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, we'll have to see if we can expand. I've got a few ideas too that I'm gonna keep off here that just recently happened this week that I'll tell you in the after effects of the show, here in the aftermath of it. But with that being said, we do have to get to the after hours segment of the show where we're not on the air and can talk about that. And we've only got one more thing that we've got to do before we take it to that. And let's look at one badass outro. For the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. McCarthy, Ryan McCarthy, I am Drew Willingham. And as always, we got to leave you with this. Stay safe out here in these streets.